So we're thematically following on to some degree from where we were last week, and I'd like to ask you about pornography, which is a theme obviously many of our listeners and followers have an interest in or a relationship with. But the only public take I've ever heard you make about pornography is that you don't have a take on pornography. Um, and I don't know if that's you sidestepping the issue, or you just having some things to say that are not quite ripe, or you're waiting for a particular moment. I'd be interested while we're here in this topic to hear, in all the nuance or refinement necessary, what's your general take?
Okay. Okay. I was on a radio show years ago. A woman had a sex radio show in Montreal, and she asked me some questions. We had a nice interview, and then she said to me, she said, I ask all my guests this. I would like to know your opinion about pornography today and what it's doing. And my answer was, I have no response to that, which I don't. I didn't, and I don't. Now, let me explain that to a degree. Pornography, to me, is a social thing that's socially talked about and socially discussed and socially prevalent, like something like feminism. And these social elements are things that I've never addressed. I've never really talked about feminism, ever. On my YouTube, all my courses, and I don't talk about, I talk about men and women all the time, but I don't talk about the social aspects like pornography. Now, and I'm not unaware. I don't sidestep it, as you elegantly put it at the beginning, at all. I'm very much aware of social issues, pornography, online dating, all these things that have changed and migrated into our consciousness. And I realize that pornography is prevalent and accessible everywhere in this modern age, notwithstanding that there was a lot of pornography in India, 3,000 years ago. And that sort of thing. I mean, it's always been around, but it's super accessible to young children almost, today. If they get access to the internet, they're smart enough to get past any filters. So, and I can agree and nod my head and imagine that it is having an impact on society, the prevalence of and the availability of pornography. For instance, our body culture, the way we imagine our bodies, like men and women probably have a different unrealistic view of their own body, which pornography inhabits. The concept of intimacy, and what we talked about in the last episode, which is this idea of a real sharing experience. Because pornography, realistically, body parts are exchangeable. You're taking something that we would call a sacred experience, and you're breaking it down to its component parts. And one set of boobs is on your screen can be transferred into another set of boobs. And you're breaking down something that is holistic into body parts and into fragmented moments to just the physical act itself, as opposed to the spiritual, emotional aspect of it. It's, I've said before that, I mean, the idea is like you watching pornography and you're caught up in the moment, and then you're done and the video is done and the screen goes black and all you see is reflected is yourself. So pornography is taking something that is I and thou, a shared experience, and stripping out the shared part. It's just I. It's illusory. So I get it. I understand that. And that's the most I've ever talked about pornography, actually, just what I just said now. And I imagine it's hurting the psyche of young people everywhere. Let's just assume that it's, and then there's advocates who say, no, that's good. It's like, it's expressive. it's open. It's like, it's autonomy. So I don't come down. I don't have this internal compass that says, it's bad or it's good. I really don't. I don't have an opinion of it because I haven't studied it. And what I told that radio host years ago when she asked me that is I really don't have an opinion of it because it doesn't interest me to talk about. Just like feminism doesn't interest me to talk about. I know it's real, it's prevalent. It's like politics doesn't interest me to talk about. I get it. It's there and it's affecting society in a massive way, but there's enough voices. That's how I feel. There's enough voices talking about pornography, feminism, politics. There's enough talking heads. They don't need my voice interjected on top of that layer. Oh, no, here's what my opinion is. I don't have that. I want to talk about what we've been talking about on this podcast, which is the glory of a man and a woman coming together and trying to express themselves to each other. The idea of polarity, what makes a man feel like he's living an artful life, the concept of beauty in art and physics and mathematics and architecture, in the ancient beliefs and traditions that we used to have, rituals. I want to talk about those things. That to me, it fills my bandwidth. I have no more, I can't layer on a political level or a debate level. I'll never have a debate with anybody. You'll never see, I've never had a debate anywhere on any film with anybody saying, no, well, I see your position, but here's what I think. I don't have that. I don't have a debate with you. I just didn't listen to you, right? So I don't have it in my body at all. I've been on panels at conferences. I've been a speaker of, like, one of 7 speakers. And on the last day, say, Sunday afternoon, we're going to have this big, all you 7 guys up there on the panel. I hide in my hotel room. I try and be not findable because I don't want to be on the panel because I don't have the spirit in me to have, from the audience. And 2 of the people on the panel are much more vocal. And they're dominating the conversation. I don't have it in me to say, well, hey, Jordan, yeah, well, I agree with you, but here's another take on it. I just sit there on the panel quietly. I just sit there and look at the audience and smile because I just don't, I have no debate in me at all. And so anybody I think that goes into talking about pornography or feminism, any of these types of things, you can only do it in a, well, maybe not, but my assumption is you can only do it in a debate format because everyone's got a strong opinion on it.
Well, there is another channel of this conversation, which is a private one. So let's say you have a younger man come to you for mentoring and he says, Zan, I got into pornography and I'm worried that it's a little too much and I'm not quite sure how to move forward with this. I'm sure in that very private, non-combative, non-debating sphere, there are people that would love to get your take, even if it's a very private and personal one. And even if it's a take on, how they should navigate as an individual man coming of age in an era of hyper access to pornography. Do you have any notes of guidance?
That's really interesting you said that because I just considered my 25 years of having conversation with men. And I can count on one hand the amount of times that pornography has come up to me. No one asked me that question. No one says, "Hey, Zan, I'm spanking it a lot, and I need, and I think I'm doing it too much." For some reason, that's not something that's presented to me. It's never, and I imagine. I tell the guy, you probably really like watching porn all day. You have a sexual drive. And then they nod sheepishly. Yeah, it's true. But nobody brings it up to me. Maybe they don't see in me somebody that can give them a practical guidance on that. And what practical guidance could I say? Well, get out in the real world and get away from your computer and your phone and your pornography and get out into the real world and try and interact with women, which is sound advice across the board, no matter what. But I don't remember ever saying that. For some reason, that's really interesting. There's some things that are not presented to me. Have you?
Yeah. And I think that's a you thing because we have colleagues that have made an entire living from nofap, right?
Yeah. And it never is asked me ever. Nobody's ever asked me my opinion on that, except for you on the last podcast. So did you get that in your coaching practice? Because you've done hundreds of men over the years, right? Conversations with men.
Yeah. With porn a little bit. So I mean, I have, I wouldn't say an ultra strong take. I have a sizable take on porn, like an opinion on pornography and its use and its place within our journey
Okay.
of, let's say, self and sexual understanding and
Sure.
sexual integration and so on. Just to answer your question before I go there, I don't get a lot of questions, particularly about porn. Like Jordan, I'm struggling with this thing about porn, and I wish it wasn't the case. I do get a lot of questions about performance anxiety, PE, or not being able to get it up with a woman, which are questions of anxiety and questions of a difficulty to remain embodied, or they haven't learned what it actually means to remain in the body during sex. The anxiety, the thought that I have to step up and do something right now gets the wheels spinning and causes actually the tightening, the out of bodiness that is underneath the premature ejaculation. So I've worked that a few times. And once you realize it's anxiety, so once you realize that's anxiety, you can really help someone quite quickly come into their body and overcome that. And I've had people say, you know, before my longest sexual experience was 15 minutes. Now it's been like 3 or 4 hours because I learned the principles of, you know, just owning my anxiousness, sharing that with her.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh God, I'm a little nervous here. Why don't we take a few minutes to slow down? I'm so happy to be here, but I just want to relax. I'm kind of overwhelmed. This is you can share some of these things. You get it off your chest. So that I've worked with a lot. With pornography, this came to me as a kind of antidote to sexual shame, right? So I've had hundreds and hundreds of men come to me for coaching, and they've said, well, the thing I suffer from most is sexual shame.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
And what I would like to overcome is my sexual shame.
Yeah.
And they kind of say that's their case and that's it. So that begs a few questions, like what is sexual shame? How does it feel when you have it? What makes sexual shame actually a real thing? What's the real thing that you're talking about here? How do you know that you just haven't self-diagnosed with some fancy term you got off a YouTube video and you're actually suffering from this thing called sexual shame? How do you know it's shame, right? So there's all these initial questions to unpack what that actually means. So one can work with the emotion of shame, and one can work, which is a lot more common, with the defenses that most men absolutely do not want to feel any shame. So if shame is lurking on the horizon, let's say there's some shame, it might happen, or there's some shame bubbling underneath, most men will go numb, they will go cold, they will distance themselves, they will walk out the room, they will retreat, or they might hypercompensate by being more alpha or more social in a way that everyone around them realizes it as a mask and is disconnected, right? So most men do not know their relationship with shame at all because it's a quiet, eerie feeling. The feeling of being ashamed is spooky. It's a little ghost-like. Most of us just deflect it to not feel it. So it strikes me as kind of a little strange that people say, yeah, I've got sexual shame. What, so you're in a sexual moment and then you feel shame? Well, often it's just the prediction that if things get sexual, or here's the thing, if a woman really knew what I thought about or wanted, or if anyone knew what I thought about or wanted, and that was revealed to the world, I would feel like I would want the earth to open up and because what I think in here is, that's taboo. I've got to keep that a secret. I would be ashamed if anyone figures out what I've got up here.
That's correct. Yeah.
So that's typically what men are going through. So porn and the domain of sexual fantasies, I think, is a great way to start teasing this out. And just to be fair, like most of the men that come and work with me are not like first time to personal development. They've done a little bit of they've asked a few questions, they've done a little bit of seeking, and they come and embark upon this work once they've got a bit of confidence that they can speak about this, right? It's very difficult that you that you've never had any contact with a coach, or you've never read any book about this subject. But when they're ready, and there's been some preparation, we'll have a conversation. And what I think porn can represent is the positive, or it has within it the positive antidote to this sexual shame.
Okay.
Which is, we can analyze the shame all day long, but the things that you dream of or that you really want to do sexually are the source of so much libido and love of life, that if you were to get your actual fantasy, like if it were to happen, so much libidinal erotic energy would surge through you that it would feel like the greatest thing ever.
Right.
And so this entire massive life force that's been kept suppressed and in the closet could now charge free. There would be absolute freedom coming through.
Okay,
so
I see what you're saying.
This is about owning
you have
what
that outlet.
This is about owning what you really desire. Yeah. So underneath the sexual shame is the sexual impulse, the actual desire, the thing that you want, the thing that would, if you had it, give you the most energy that you could ever imagine.
Okay. And it's born and bred in you. I mean, it's something that is part of your psyche. That
I mean,
that desire.
This is worth exploring a little bit. So the role of porn, like a lot of the guys that do my coaching, and especially we talk about this in a group coaching scenario, a lot of guys are like, I want to quit porn, I want to get off it because I know that it's I'm leaking away my virility and my creativity.
Right.
I really wish I didn't engage in it, and they're liable to go full abstinence or no fap at this point. And I typically say as a thought experiment, what if you were going to quit porn forever and you could never go back? What would be 1 or 2 videos that you would like to download and take with you as a keepsake of your journey through this world? Or another one, let's say you were on death row. You know, they give you any meal that you want. You can choose steak, sushi, supposedly anything. Let's say you're on death row and you can have any final meal. Well, what if you're on death row and obviously they're not going to let you out of prison? You're not really going to go to a bar or on a date with anyone. But what if you could have 1 or 2 final porn videos before that was it? You know, you could satisfy yourself with a final few moving pictures. A lot of the guys at this point smile and think, actually, yeah, there is 1 or 2 that I can think of right now that brought me a particular level of delight. And then the experience of porn, I think, is really interesting. Like when you are scrolling, let's say you open up one of these free kind of aggregator porn sites, right? And you're scrolling and you're just looking through moving thumbnails is what they are now, right? You're looking through, you've seen these thumbnails, you're seeing a 5-second clip of this thumbnail as it's moving. What's your psyche actually doing in that moment? What's it looking for? It's scanning. It wants to find something. When you go into the search box and you press in your keyword, what keywords do you use? Right? And if you look at the tab on the side of one of these sites, it has a bunch of different categories. Teen, MILF, big boobs, facial, interracial, BDSM, whatever. Like, exactly. And you might look at some of those categories and think, who the hell wants that? Yeah. But somebody does. Right?
Yeah.
And then there are all these different kind of sub-strains or tropes within porn, right? So you have the office boss and secretary, high school teacher and student. She's in detention after class, but she will go down on the headmaster or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Then you have like more and more abstract stuff. You have anime. You have tentacles. You have this stuff on a train where there's a lot of Japanese people on a train and they barge into each other and you get gropers. you know, like this old man in a business suit is just like groping away, and the woman's pretending not to notice because that would create a stir. There's a whole cornucopia of different themes out there, right? And so you're seeking something, and I wonder, like, I typically think that when a man or a woman is searching through pornography, you're not just going to settle for anything. You don't want to just watch bland generic porn. I think we're looking for a particular image that reflects back to us a particular peak. And if only I can find a particular image within the whole world, like millions of porn videos, if only I can find the one image that is the right image, then I will click on it and I'll be very, very happy. Because not all orgasms are equal, right? You have many orgasms, and then you have kind of a great one. So if you really want to get off and have an optimum release, you're going to watch an image that casts a spell on you that is above and beyond all the others.
Yes.
A peak, obviously, a peak image, a peak experience of orgasm. And there's an image. So in my understanding of the psyche is that the depth of the psyche is made of images. And the images are right there next to libido or life force energy. And if you only get the right image, you will arouse the life force energy in the right way. And that's why you ask a guy, like, what's your favorite kind of woman? Well, it has to be the 1990s Pamela Anderson blonde. You know, big boobs, blonde, white, red, Baywatch style. Like, that's what I want, and it has to be her. And another man will have a different image. So what's really interesting is to understand, say in your favorite porn video, who is the woman? You know, what are her characteristics? Color, shape, size, age, mood, energy, you know, bitchy, archetype. Is she bitchy? Is she spiky? Is she innocent? Is she giving? Is she voluptuous? Is she initiatory? Is she the kind of cougar, or is she the, you know, the unknowing, in denial victim of it all? So her personality in the narrative is, there's so much richness to that. Then you've got the setting. Does it happen in school? Does it happen in nature? Does it happen in a dungeon? Does it happen somewhere else? That the setting all has so many different variables to it. And then you have the act itself. You know, is it quick? Is it down and dirty? Are there, you know, 7 people in the room? Is it very slow? You know, there are types of porn where literally they massage in each other for 45 minutes before you even see any boob. It's like, why? Well, there's a specific audience that needs it that way.
That way.
Here it's like, yeah, it doesn't quite matter if it's the porn video, or it doesn't quite matter if it's your own internal fantasy, because you could be sitting on a bus thinking of these things, or you could be touching yourself and thinking this stuff. But whether it's a video or whether it's internally generated, we each have 1, maybe 2 narratives that get us off the most.
Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Is this making sense?
100%.
So a lot of guys are like, all porn is bad and it's demonic, and I want to get off it as soon as possible. And I'm like, yeah, I can really understand that. Really, the incentive structure behind the porn industry is extremely questionable, and that, you know, they want to clearly keep you exploiting almost everybody from every angle, but they want to keep you online as long as possible. And it's also been leaked some interesting conversations where, you know, if we can give you new sexual tastes that you don't have already and that you can't meet in the real world, then you'll continue your consumption of porn.
Yeah.
So if you get into animated alien tentacle porn, that doesn't exist. So you'll have to be a consumer of the website if you want to get more, and if you want to have the experience of image libido explosion.
That's correct. Yeah.
But I think before you throw the baby out with the bathwater, it's worth taking this deep dive in and just being like, what's your peak erotic fantasy? What's your peak porn video? What is the narrative that your psyche needs to be taken on so you can arrive at the greatest, deepest orgasm, sense of pleasure of your entire life? So I like to mine. If I speak with a guy about sexual shame, we can talk a few things about shame and the barriers and what keeps him stuck. But the real conversation is, what if you mine the most vibrant and taboo and life-giving annals of your erotic imagination? And what if you can know that? Because once you start to know it, you can actually have a bit of proactivity about it.
Yes. Yeah. That's interesting. But it makes complete sense, Jordan. I mean, like, it's because we all have it in us. We have it. We have that peak experience or that peak image. And how do we, so to deny it is not human. So what you're saying is not go down the exhaustive route of just draining yourself with pornography, but to know that.
But not go into this other realm, which is utter abstinence and then judgment
Right.
of self, judgment of the industry. But actually look right in the center of that, there is a thread that takes you to the core of who you are as a person. You get off to this very particular curated image.
That's
and
right.
Within that image is a whole cornucopia of needs, right? Why do you like women more dominant than you, or why do you like women more submissive to you? Why do you want them older? Why do you want them younger? Why do you want, this body part enlarged and elongated and this body part smaller? What's that to do with? And you can start to understand that. And you've got kind of two types of porn videos or fantasies. You've got stuff that could be real.
Yep.
A one-on-one encounter in the woods. A girl at school, you're doing homework with a high school girl and you rubbing shoulders, and then it kind of unfolds into an innocent sexual exploration. Right. Or even it could be group sex, right? You've got 4 or 5 women and they're all servicing you in turn. This is in the realm of the possible. And then you have the realm of the impossible, which is you have a woman with just impossible shaped body, maybe giantess as a theme, right? Or literally you've got 100 women right now. Or like one of the fantasies like I've heard is, I started ejaculating and it never ended. It was just like 12 hours of ejaculation. Well, that doesn't fit in the realm of the possible, but it certainly means something. So a lot of fantasies have to do with hyperpotency, right? Like in my fantasy, the cock is 2 feet long. Well, that's not possible. It doesn't matter what substance you buy online. You click on one of those side banners and you end up buying something that's delivered to you. I mean, that's probably not going to happen, right? So there's a bunch of stuff in fantasy and porn that can happen, which you might understand and then learn how to bring in your own relationships. Hey, my love, I never told you this because I'm embarrassed, but one thing that would be like the most life-giving, satisfying thing for me to explore would be this. You can share that with your partner. You can share the porn. You can share the video. It's like an ultimate vulnerability, but there is a practical thing you can do. But let's say your fantasies and what you seek are not possible. Well, all of them are based upon a certain psychological need. And this is one of the key things that I've learned through this process. Most of what we seek for in sex and in pornography and in our fantasies, in our imagination, are based on a very intricate kind of network of what we need psychologically.
Right.
And so if there's stuff that you didn't get when you were growing up, fantasy is a place where you can give yourself the placebo. Let's say, and the typical answer is, or the typical case study is, you didn't get enough of mother's nourishment, her milky nourishment, let's say, both the breast and her heart and her attention and her care, then you might go later through life with a breast fixation.
Yep.
Not sure that's always accurate, but it's a solid psychological thesis.
Something Freudian kicked in, and go ahead.
Yeah. Let's say you have a fantasy where you've got a harem of 150 women. You're in some kind of sultan's castle in Arabia. I think there was a Johnny Depp movie. This was in Don Juan de Marco. Yeah, that's true. You got 150 women, and you have to keep everyone satisfied, and that's your fantasy. That's not really going to happen. 150 in the same castle, but the what abundance means is, abundance is this astronomical number and you, in your mind, it feels like you need many. But if you just had the abundance of one, which means you had her in her fullest, well, that might satiate the need, the longing. You need to be overawed by a sense of abundance.
Yeah, maybe.
So
Yeah.
you think you need this incredible group sex scenario, but when you really come down to the emotions underneath it, so that we have our emotions, our emotional wounding, our emotional needs, very close to the libido and our sexual force, actually what you find that you need typically is a lot less and a lot more realistic than the far-fetchedness of the fantasy images create. So there is a way that you can kind of track back and look through more fantastical kind of porn videos and fantasies and understand, actually, this is what I really want. Now I can realize that.
Yeah, you've really put some thought into this, Jordan, and considered this a lot, right? I mean, it's good. I mean, I think I have no quarrel with anything you're saying at all. I think you're nailing it right. The question that men have, and because no woman can ever match up to the ideal that they have in their mind, because we're all humans, and the old thing is how to keep the passion alive. That's a big relationship thing, right? If you have fantasy about 100 women and you downsize it to one, maybe that nourishes you for a time. I don't know, but maybe that is still an aspect that is overlaying your consciousness that comes into affect your level of intimacy with your your spouse, for instance. I don't know these things. I really don't know these things.
Yeah, like one of the go
I
ahead.
like it. I'm listening.
One of the inquiries that I have, which I share with my clients when we start working in these things, are, let's say you have a particular fantasy or urge or desire. To what degree is that, does that come from some internal thing that, if that's healed, your fantasy or your desire will go away and it will stop bothering you?
Well, then that's assuming
Right?
that it's a deficit. That's assuming then that is something
Right.
fixed, right? But maybe it's just human nature. I mean, like, I like the color blue, you like the color green,
Well, yes. And I think a lot of the strange thing about fantasies is some people love them, like they are an inner sanctuary, secret garden, place of retreat. You can have this imaginal affair. But some people find them as a source of bother, which is,
Yeah.
I think these thoughts about women that I can't get, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to get them, and that's a source of bother. And I
Yeah.
realize that I can't be more intimate with my actual partner because I keep dreaming of this thing, or I have this compulsion just to check the porn site to see if there's another video about this thing that I want.
When your wife's in
So
bed.
it can,
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
deficit.
and you're checking out feet, or you're typing in women from some other part of the world or whatever it is. Yeah. So there's a source of bother. So one question is, on one side of the inquiry, but if you understand the emotional roots that underpin your fantasies or your need for porn, do you then heal that, and then the compulsion and the image and the fantasy and the bother goes away? Or to what degree do you actually need to live it out and have the experience so that you can complete something in the world, and that way have the psyche relax there? It can,
Yeah, that's a deficit.
yeah, and you're checking out feet, or you're typing in women from some other part of the world or whatever it is. Yeah. So there's a source of bother. So one question is, on one side of the inquiry, but if you understand the emotional roots that underpin your fantasies or your need for porn, do you then heal that, and then the compulsion and the image and the fantasy and the bother goes away? Or to what degree do you actually need to live it out and have the experience so that you can complete something in the world, and that way have the psyche relax there? Or to what degree is this thought stream, or this proclivity, or this kink with you for life, and that's just the material that you're working with?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is something that you can by trying to understand yourself and learning and studying, you can resolve from your psyche, or is it something that's part of your psyche forever? See, this is the kind of question I don't know how to answer. These psychological questions.
So I put that on the client. I think all are possible, but I don't want to answer it for you, for the listener or the reader or the client. That's your question. I can just support you as well as I can in the exploration.
Yes. Yeah.
But what seems to be really cool is if someone comes and says, Jordan, I've got this stack of sexual shame. If anyone found out what I really thought, I would feel like utterly humiliated. And I don't, that's the last thing I want in the world. Well, we can engage, and I bring a lot of humor. We have a lot of fun with this kind of conversation. But if you get to a point where it's like, I've really understood my pornography, my taste in pornography. I've really understood my fantasy world. I really understand my desires, my needs, the impossible things, the possible things. And I feel gladness and gratitude and joy and delight in whether it's natural or whether it was conditioned in me, since whatever my sexual wiring has become is a source of delight and pleasure. And I might not actually, tattoo on the side of my body and go around the world dressed in leather or whatever. I might not make it obvious to people, but I have a really loving relationship to that side of me. Well, if you get into that place, all of a sudden your whole life experience has changed.
And you're good. Yeah. Right? That's interesting. Yeah, these are concepts that I intuit and I understand what you're saying, but I don't put a lot of thought process into it. But it is compelling and fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I think if you throw all porn out the window, you're not quite going to get there, because so many of us have been conditioned by it. And I don't condone or recommend too much porn use, but I got to say, like, when I was 10 or something like that, I was foraging in the woods with a friend of mine, and we found a shopping trolley full of porn magazines, like 40 or 50 different top shelf magazines from the supermarket in a shopping trolley in the woods. And we'd just sit through there and look through the pages. And my friend would be like, "Oh, do you like the boobs or do you like the pussies?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, let me look, And then that same kid, his family was the first family in our street to get satellite TV. Oh. So in England, we didn't have cable TV, but we had satellite. And in the 90s, when I was growing up, one by one, the satellites would pop up around the houses. And at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, it would only happen one time a week. There would be, because in England, we had no pornography. There was basically not even bare chests on women. There was a 1970s series called Confessions of a Plumber and Confessions of a, of a...
You remember it well.
Confessions of a Housewife. Yeah, like you would actually get a tiny touch of soft porn. But on these Friday nights, we would get a German channel, and they would transmit a German show. I think it was called Red Shoe Diaries. And over half an hour, you would get some good...
You remember it well, yeah.
Boobs by the end of it. And we'd be 11, 12 years old watching this as a ritual on a Friday night, dying in, we really want to get to the end of the episode before my buddy's parents come back from the restaurant, right? And are they going to come back and see what we've been watching? And these experiences were so joyous. That's what I'm getting to here. It was so joyful to discover between that age of 10 and 13, what? Girls, women, they have this, they have boobs, they have butts, they have these bodies, they stand like, wow. And there's a purity. And I know that if once an addiction takes place, it can become a compulsion and a very heavy experience. But the initial experiences of seeing these images was like,
it's a good memory.
The whole world is possible. Yeah.
On a side note, I was raised in Northern Canada, and I remember, let's say 2 or 3 times discovering a pile of porn magazines in the woods. And I've always wondered about that.
Such a worldwide thing. And
It's
who is stashing their porn in the woods, right?
somewhere that a lot of people had that experience back in the day. And nobody knows who put them there. What's the deposit? You know, I have no idea. But I remember discovering that several times when I was a kid. Just a side note.
So how do we retain the pleasure and the wonder of first discovery? That very same innocent moment over the long term.
Yeah, because like you said, you're wide-eyed with wonder. You first see a boob. You're thrilled. You're exploratory. You're developing as a young man, as a boy to a man. And then later in life, 30 years later, you're bored because you can't find the proper thumbnail. Right?
Yeah.
It's
become, and it has become to such a degree where you can't appreciate actual living women or intimacy,
right?
Because the images of what you think sexual encounters should be are so rigid and static, and they've become so encrusted on your psyche. When you meet a real life woman, it's like, this doesn't behave like I want it to, and that I expect it to in porn, and that's alienating, and it's outside of control. It's another thing. If you're watching porn, you're always in control of the sexual experience.
So, and like I said, there's another thing that I haven't put a lot of reflection into, but there was a joyous experience in those early encounters, the illicit side of it, the sneaky side of it, the peeking into the world of adults side of it, which was very revelatory and development wise good for you.
Yeah.
And then, so what your question is, how do you restore that sense of wonder, because that's what it is, into the modern pornographic age of, sexual availability, sexual two-dimensional availability, at least, maybe not three-dimensional, maybe not real world. Because I never thought about that before, but that's a fascinating thing. If you could restore that delight you had as a boy when you first discovered porn, for your wife, for instance, today, that's pretty remarkable. And I don't know the path or the tools or the way of thinking that would restore that. But it's something I'm thinking about now. This is really interesting. I don't have an answer to that. How do you do that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Or at least I have a sense of methodology, which is a fascinating exploration.
Okay.
I think if I go into it, it's just going to be far too technical to lay out on a podcast.
Okay.
But there's certain, let's say, coaching /therapeutic meditation style methods that can bring up a lot of insight. Emotional insight, you engage the imagination. And particularly, like you heard about dream work, like when you have a dream. This is very interesting. When you have a dream, you get all these images, but you don't embody the images. They're just kind of things that happen to you and you see in your dream, and you wake up and you remember your dream, right? It's similar with a sexual fantasy or watching porn. Your mind and your psyche is flooded with images, but not much of it is felt.
Right.
So it's dissociative. You'd say in kind of trauma work, it's dissociative. I think all these sexual things, but I'm not in my body when I'm actually thinking them. Now, if only you were in your body when you're thinking these sexual things, well, what would happen is the amount of energy that's actually moving through is so strong and severe. That's why people don't go in their body.
Yes.
It's like, oh my God, this is like an overwhelming, overpowering amount of turn on, arousal, charge. I need to dissociate and start thinking things. So it's very hard actually for a man to stay with his embodied erotic experience, and a woman to stay with that, because it's God, what does that mean? Where is this going to go? Is everyone going to discover? Do I need to do something with this? Am I even going to be able to walk home? Am I going to get, like a number of our clients do, am I going to get a Woody Harrelson in the middle of the dance class that I'm taking right now? So it's easier for all of us just to disassociate from this animalistic force that moves through us. And I think that's the way so many of us live our sexual lives. It all happens in the imagination. And it's not that you lack energy in the body, it's that you're dissociated from the energy in the body. Right. And then embodiment work is to actually get that back. So it's like, actually, yeah, when I watch a porn video, I'm acutely aware of all the sensation and the pleasure and the different feelings that move through me.
Right. Yeah.
You start reclaiming that force back as an embodied experience.
Well, I'm just doing a lot of thinking on this, Jordan. You're making me aware of things that I've intuited, but I haven't really consciously been thinking about. This is really interesting. It's part of the alignment that men are seeking, without judgment. No judgment of yourself, no judgment of modern society. Right?
Yeah. And it just, from my perspective, it's I've long had these interests because growing up and enjoying, like I said, I enjoyed my first encounters with figuring out women and porn, and I was right at the start of the internet, so there were no videos, but we could get erotic stories. And I remember trying to let's say I found an image of a woman, a topless image of a woman, and I wanted to open it. Well, often it wouldn't download through the dial-up. It was too slow. So I couldn't even, and you'd see the top pixels and then this, and you get to her face, and then you get to her neck, and you're like, come on. And it just wouldn't load. It wouldn't load anything below the neck, and it was so painful. The only thing you could actually load up consistently was erotic stories. So people would actually type out their fantasy in text. Yeah, and you get this whole thing, which is a slower, more meandering path towards the climax.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. But it's this whole conversation that the Amorata brought to me about sexual shame. Like, what is my sexual shame, and how can I overcome this feeling of sexual shame? If it wasn't for men coming to me with that question, I might not ever have gone down all the different psychological rabbit holes that this has taken me down. This is me. When I started working with the Amorata, I thought, how hard can it be? Just show up and start speaking to women. And 15 years later, I'm still finding out new things, right? Like touching into new depths in order to be of service to the people that have these questions. It's such, I was not prepared for the rabbit hole that this has ended up being, understanding the full psychological, spiritual, philosophical nature of men and women, and loving, and our attractions and our energies towards each other.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating layers, and you have a very good perspective and take on things. You reflected on it a lot more than I have. That's for sure. Wow.
So, I mean, we started this with a question about pornography. Like, what's your take? Yeah, like what's going on in your mind? I shared some of my side and what I'm seeing and working with.
Like I said, like I don't have a judgmental feel about what's good or bad for society, even though I get it, that I can intuit that something, or I can make the assumption that something's bad for society or good for society, but I don't come down on either side, because I'm more of a stoic type of feeling of, or maybe a Buddhist way of thinking, which is this good? By all regards and angles, it seems good, but maybe it isn't necessarily good. Like, it's kind of neutral. So I don't judge pornography. I do love the remembrance of my first encounters when I was a boy. There's a delight in that that should not be judged. Is it prevalent today in harming our youth? Could very possibly. So I'm just listening to what you're saying, and I haven't changed my reflection or my internal conversation with myself, except to be more understanding that, I mean, obviously a lot of the shame that men have is because of their sexual, maybe the proclivities, their fetish, they have shame around it, maybe, you know, or their lack of being able to perform. There's a lot of shame that men have. And so I address that on all kinds of levels. But whether something's good or bad or neutral, I still don't have an opinion. Strange.
Mm-hmm. I'm only speaking to an adult audience with a general sense of curiosity in all of this. Like I don't have a wide, like you say, I'm not advocating strongly for or against anything to do with pornography.
Or
but within adults that have enough curiosity.
Sorry, go ahead.
Within the realm of adults that have a bit of curiosity about it, my sense is, if you understand emotionally and psychologically what's really going on when you seek porn or you engage with this material, once you grow in awareness in this level, it tends to have you take different decisions.
I see, yeah.
And wiser, more integrated decisions. But that does not necessarily mean putting the lid on it and outcasting all porn or all pornographic material forever. It might just mean a very light sense, maybe a light sense deep into your adulthood of reconnecting with the small 1% of all this swathe of porn that exists in the world. There's a small 1% that gives a real fun perspective that is life enhancing, and that can somehow be useful.
That's right. Yeah, makes sense to me.
Maybe we'll have a deluge of questions that will take this conversation on further, but and if so, put them in the comments and we'll read through. I'm quite interested in hearing responses, reflections, and if you have personal questions or you really want to go on, as I say, the psychological process of understanding this relationship and what it means for your actual sex life, then get in touch, because we offer that kind of guidance.
That's correct. Well, good, Jordan. Thank you very much.
All righty.